Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we're all having a blessed Sabbath. Um, I want to thank you all for your continued support and your continued blessings and prayers for me, for my family, and also for giving me the encouragement to continue on this channel. I am still making videos, but as many of you know, or if you've seen my first video, the goal of making these videos is to really increase the exposure, spread the word about Seventh-day Adventist and the end times, the true Bible. So please continue to share my videos for any brothers and sisters that haven't moved over to the real truth, or still contemplating, they're not sure, or ultimately, just sharing the word, because the more we can you can share my videos, and I'm hoping my videos are helpful at some extent, because as I mentioned, the title of my videos, I did come from a Muslim background, and moving over to Seventh-day Adventist was not an easy transition for me, but it was a difficult one, but it ultimately turned out to be very rewarding. Now, I did receive a few questions from folks about, in general, why the transition of all the religions. What made you choose Seventh-day Adventist, or what's so special about Seventh-day Adventist that of all the religions we have here, that it did not falter you to make the wrong choice. At the end of the day, when I look at it here, I don't necessarily have that, I don't necessarily put that choice on myself. See, God does give us a freedom of choice, right? He gives us that freedom to make whatever decisions we want to do, whether it's good or bad, whether it'll work in our favor or not. He's given this freedom to all his children. But when I look at my situation, I look at it more of, I don't think it was more like, I'll play tic-tac-toe to find out which religion I'll move over to, right? I mean, leaving Islam for me was like taking a piece of my identity, taking a piece of me out, right? Because all my years growing up, I've always been associated to being a Muslim. My name is an Islamic, came from the Quran. It's an Islamic name, and I use Tanya for the channel. I never disclosed my real name, but to say here is that it's Tanya is one of my nicknames that I use here, but my real name is not actually, it comes from that Islamic background. So my name, my identity, right, what I'm associated with, my values, my culture, everything was tied to Islam as I was growing up, right? I see my parents, I see that we fast 30 days every year, we celebrate 2 Eids, right? We're supposed to pray 5 times a day, we're supposed to read the Quran. So all these things I learned, right? And I mentioned in my previous videos that I went to like you have a Bible school, but we have the Quran school too, where I was learning how to read the Quran. But and this is more very common here, that for many children that don't know Arabic and they learn Arabic, they're not necessarily understanding what does the Quran say, right? I never fully understood the Quran until I got the English translation. So even if you go to these Quran schools, you're never fully taught the word of Allah, right? You're never fully taught that. You never understand the history behind it. You don't understand what you're reading. This is so difficult to digest and difficult to understand, but literally I saw myself every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, where I would go, where we would have our Quran teacher come over to our house and pretty much watch us read the Quran in the right enunciation, the right way of reading it, right? And I would never understand a thing about it. I asked this question, like, what is this? What am I reading? Because whatever I'm reading, I'm not retaining it. Because how can you retain something when you don't understand what you're reading, right? I'm just reading it for the sake of it, for the fact that my mom wanted me to learn how to read the Quran, right? You're supposed to memorize the Quran. But again, How do you memorize the Quran when you don't understand what it says? So I always look at for I still have friends that are from that are Muslim, and till this day, if you ask them what does this mean, what does this say, right? They're just gonna say something that you know Allah's merciful, Allah's compassionate, but there's nothing more to it. There's no depth in it, what you're reading. And so that overall, moving that transition over to reading the Bible, right? Studying the Bible, obviously have the English version, right? And reading it, and I understand that there's like so much depth in the Bible, right? There's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of connections. There's a lot of ways to interpret the Bible, but to interpret it the right way. But it was it's something that should have been taught when I was younger, when I was in that Quran school, right? But I never understood how to actually read a holy scripture, to what extent, until I started reading the Bible. Even when I started reading the Bible, I understood, but I never again fully grasped it. Even till this day, at times I still struggle with that, but I'm trying to fight that battle. I'm trying to, overcome that. I pray to God that He continues to give me that wisdom to overcome that and really continue to learn and understand the Bible, learn the depth. Because at times when we're reading any holy books, we are only reading it at a surface level, right? Or in my situation, you're reading the surface level, but you don't understand, right? But, from reading the Bible, I understand from a surface level, but to get a deeper understanding, to get the connections, to, make those connective dots, but also understand the messaging, understand the symbolism, it takes years to learn, right? So watching the sermons, and I did mention in my previous videos that if you haven't, Pastor Stephen Bohr is he's an amazing pastor, and he really takes the time to explain the symbolism, explains the verses, and also draws connections throughout the Bible, right? He gives one interpretation, but he always backs it up with the Bible. The Bible was written years and years ago, right? And it's something that we cannot take lightly. I mean, everything that we're looking at it from a prophetic chain event was already fulfilled in the Bible much before it even happened. How can you not say that it is not true, right? I did not see that in the Quran. Even after I got the English translation, started reading it, I don't see that impact, that powerful proof that the Quran is the only one, right? I get that sense from the Bible. When I read the Bible, I see it because I see it with my own eyes, everything that's happened. The Bible was written years ago, but you see the prophetic chain evolving and happening in our eyes, in our history. Even history in schools don't even teach all this in depth, but the Bible does, right? So I look at it and I cannot take the Bible lightly. It is such a beautiful and such an important book for us. But you also have, if I'm sure many of our Seventh-day Adventists know her, Mrs. Ellen G. White, right? I know there's many few people who are just going through the journey of Seventh-day Adventists, or maybe they're not Seventh-day Adventists, don't know her. She's a very powerful figure, in our history, and she doesn't come from a luxurious education background. She came from a very elementary school background, but the knowledge, right, the information, if you read her The Great Controversy, Desire of Ages, right, all the books that she's written, you can see that, well, one, you're going to question, how does a elementary school, I think she was elementary school, how does someone with an elementary school education write with such depth and understanding? That's one. And two, right, like how, like when you see this and she backs it up with the Bible, how can you say that it is a blasphemy or what she's saying is not true? Everything she's saying is true, and it's backed up, and it makes total sense, right? This is someone that doesn't come from a high education, someone that doesn't come with a lot of experience, but you clearly know that God was instilled her the wisdom, gave her the skill, the power she needed to write it out. This is our last opportunity as God's people to hear his word through her work and choose the right path. I'm concerned as we get closer to the end times that how many of our brothers and sisters will still be walking the wrong path, right? Because for me, even though I know that I'm in the right path, I still have a lot to learn. I still have a lot to make sure that I'm prepared for the end times. But I'm equipped with the basics. But then there's so many brothers and sisters out there that are not even equipped with basics, right? Or they know very little thing, or majority of us, like in this world, you have Christians, but then you have different denominations within Christianity, right? Then you have like the other big religions, right? Islam, Judaism, and then you have other religions too, right? So everyone is like dispersed everywhere. And it makes you wonder that, how many of us are going to last at the end, right? And it's really not to create any fear or concern. I mean, this is something that I'll be honest that I'm hoping that in my lifetime the end times does happen, because I would love to see the second coming of our Jesus, right? Where we see that finally, like the final judgment made. But I'm also thinking, so that's the exciting part, but then you have the other side where, am I doing enough, right? Am I being a better Christian every single day, right? Am I doing more that God sees that I am doing my best? Because let's just face it, like you can do something out of routine, or you can do it something out of love, right? And it's easy to fall into routine where you just do a prayer and then go to sleep and that's it, right? But how often do you pray out of the routine, out of the heart, sheer heart and joy, just to thank God for giving you this wonderful life, even when things are so difficult, even you don't have $1 million in your account or a luxurious house or a job, right? But he's given you a very good life where you have good health, even if you're not in good health, right? You're battling with different ailments, right? Or you're dealing with a loss of some sort, whatever the case might be. But you still thank God that he gives you an opportunity to wake up another day and to start over, but make it a better day for yourself and for him, right? At the end. It's something that I think about here, but I also, again, I mentioned in my previous videos though that till date I haven't told my parents, but I know that time is gonna come where I am gonna tell them, right? But I'm leaving it in the hands of God, that he tells me when I should be doing it, because that's going to be my opportunity where hopefully I can convince my parents that move to the right side. But I will leave that to the time. I will only put in prayer when that time comes up, right? One way or the other. This week for me, just trying to segueing into another conversation. This week for me was a little bit challenging, but it also reminded me that at the end of the day, we're just humans that make mistakes, right? I obviously mentioned that I have a corporate job, and it's so easy where you don't make any mistakes, right? You have a very clean record, you do everything properly, but then one day you make a huge mistake, right? And you're scratching your head trying to find out, how did this happen? And I had that similar situation with one of my employees that made that mistake, and I'm like baffled, like, how did this person make that huge mistake? How did that happen? Right? And this week I made a mistake. I started learning how to drive. I'm 29, and I finally learned how to drive. Never needed to, right? I live in Toronto, so I never needed to drive. I live very close to downtown. Everything is close by. My work is close by. Everything is really pretty much walking distance from me, from groceries to the dentist, the clinic, everything. So I never felt the need, but I realized that with time that driving is a skill, and you never know that something might happen where you need to drive. You need to drive, and so I learned how to drive since actually, in fact, like since April, I've been taking lessons, and I got my license. And I've been driving on my own for about let's say 2 months, right? And as I was parking, I accidentally hit the front bumper of another car. And parking is something that I'm still trying to get used to, but I thought I was, ready to park in between cars, and I was trying to do forward parking. And I don't know how I got the angle wrong. I completely messed it up, and I hit the let's say the right headlight, not the bumper, but the right headlight of this van. And I was with my friend. Okay, my friend that who actually introduced me to Seven-Day Adventism, and we were in the car, and he's been driving for years, and he said it while I was doing it, that like, you have the wrong angle, be careful. But obviously he was on his phone, like he was in the passenger seat, he was on his phone, so but he thought that maybe I was gonna fix it. But I didn't. I don't know why. Like all of us, I didn't even listen to that, and I just hit just I. It was more like a kiss against the right headlight. I did a little bit of a scratch, right, but not a major. I braked immediately as soon as I saw that I'm just crashing into it. And then I fixed my car, and then I just sat there, and I'm like, I don't know what I did, because it hasn't happened, and I was panicking. I was worried because like this is crazy. Like, how could I make a mistake like this? But I'm thinking to myself, because all this time I've been driving well, but then all of a sudden this happened, and I'm just so I was very tough with myself, and I was so angry with myself that like, how could I make that big mistake? And the first thing I said, well, I have to wait for the person to come back to their car and explain to them, like, majority of the time people just, they see they made a mistake, they'll park elsewhere, or they'll drive away, right? I can't do that, right? I cannot do that. So I stayed. We were in front of the dollar store, right? And finally, it was a woman came by, and I quickly ran over to her, and I said that I'm very sorry, but I need you to know that as I was trying to front bay park, I accidentally, hit the right headlight of your car. And as I was saying this, I was trembling because I was very scared. Yeah, I was very scared, but I was also so angry with myself that, again, how could I make such a stupid mistake, such a silly mistake? And how could I do that, right? My friend, he was in the dollar store, right? He quickly came out. He was trying to console me too, right? And then he explained, we got it sorted out, right? She's not going to go to the insurance and, go to a local mechanic and, get it fixed, but then like send me a message like how much the damage was. Is going to pay for it. Like, I have no problems paying for it because it was my mistake. But once we, eventually the women, agreed to it and understood, and we exchanged our contact information, and then that's it, right? I went back into the car, and I just completely was in tears, right? But for me, it was such a, like, no one got hurt. Like, the woman was in the car was stationary, but for me it was so it was a huge impact to me, because that's a damage to someone else's property, but I could have hurt someone. It could have been a lot worse. I could have hit someone on the road, which would have been a lot worse. But I wasn't thinking of that. I wasn't. All I was thinking about is, how could I make such a crazy mistake, such a big mistake? How stupid am I? Like, I was really being hard with myself. My friend said to me that listen, you cannot be this hard on yourself, but also understand that, these mistakes are going to happen. It just means that you need to be extra careful when you're in the parking lot. But he was the one that reminded me that, this is where it's a great example where, it makes you realize that no matter how perfect you think your work would be or the things that you do, right, there's going to be flaws in you that you have to be more gentler with yourself and understand that we all make mistakes. Even for people on my team that, make mistakes, I've been working on myself for the longest time not to be so difficult, but be more understanding, have more compassion. That's been like 4 years in, improving myself and understand that human compassion, that we can all make mistakes, even if we are so confused or we're baffled, like how can this person make a mistake. It's going to happen. Someone's going to make a mistake. We're not made with perfection, right? And it was just more of a lesson for me that I cannot be this hard on myself, but also realize that I need to have more compassion for people when they do make mistakes, right? I know that my followers or everyone that watches my video, I know once, like at least once in your life, you've been involved in a collision or an accident. But honestly, he's right. My friend was right, because what happened, it could have been a lot worse. Someone could have got hurt. It could have been on the road. It could have been a major impact, major damage, right? But it wasn't. And that's something I should be thankful about. And so obviously when I got home, I quickly prayed to God that, like, for protecting me today, protecting the women if she wasn't, if or like an accident could have happened. Like, I just thanked him for really protecting, but also I see it more as a lesson too. I made the mistake. How I reacted, it's something that I need to work on myself, like not to be so hard on myself, understand the mistake, learn from it, right? Understand where I went wrong, and then continue to improve on yourself, right? We need to have more compassion for ourselves, and especially when we are deep in business and our daily living, our daily lifestyle. It's so easy to get into gossiping or making fun of someone or having very little compassion, whether for others or for yourself, right? But we have to remember that these are like the basics that God has told us, like, not to be like, to improve. So I definitely have a lot more work to do on myself, for myself specifically, right? Not to be this hard, but understand that there's no perfection. Like, everyone has a lot of work that they need to do. um this is something that I'm sharing. And just as an example, that I, like, we all have something we need to work on. For me, I need to work on not being so hard on myself, right? Have more compassion for myself, but also understand that, like, any skill that we're working on, it's not from our own strength, it's not from our own wisdom. God is the one that's giving us that strength, giving us that skill set, helping us to build that skill set, right? So I also pray to God that He also helps me to build my skill set. We're not built with innate strength, confidence, skills, to lead this life, right? This is something that God is helping me along the way, and it's helping everyone that is whatever we're trying to get into, whatever we're trying to work on. So, just a little story I wanted to share with everyone. But the bottom line here is that we need to continue to have more compassion for ourselves and for others. But that's about it. Um, Please feel free to put more comments in the comment section. I love reading everyone's comments. Just if you have a journey, if you come across something that's happened in your life that was more of a turning point, was more of an opportunity for you to work on, please share. I love hearing everyone's journeys, right? We're not all born into the truth, the 7-day Adventist, right? We all come from a different background, but God sheds the light to us where it brings us to the right direction. And I would love to hear more and more comments, and please share my videos, share my channel with any brothers and sisters that you think will be interested. And yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Please enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. Have a great day, everyone.